welcome everybody to Dynatrace Tips. If you don't know yet what Dynatrace Tips stands for, it's Dynatrace Transformative Insights for Public Sector. This is our inaugural episode, and I'm very happy to welcome everybody. I know you're joining us from across multiple different platforms. I know we have some folks from LinkedIn, from YouTube, from Facebook, maybe even some folks from Twitch. So thank you so much for joining us. And hopefully you guys enjoy today's guest that I'll be introducing in just a second. Now, before we get there, since this is our first ever episode of Dynatrace Tips, I do want to just take maybe 30 seconds to introduce the idea behind this live stream, behind this webinar. What you guys will see in the upcoming months, you will see essentially different episodes of Dynatrace Tips. We're shooting to have one episode each month when we'll be bringing in leaders from different public sector agencies to talk about the things that they're seeing in their environments and in their agencies when it comes to cloud migration, digital transformation, and observability. And with that said, today, our first ever guest on Dynatrace Tips will be Bert Bertagna from Pasco County, Florida. So welcome, Bert, everybody. Maybe just type in hi on chat really quickly. And with that said, I'll pass it, Bert, to you to just give us a few sentences about yourself.
Thanks, Matt, and good afternoon, everybody. So Bert Bertagna here. I'm the Assistant Chief Information Officer here at Pasco County Government. Been with the county a little over 2 years, primarily responsible for our infrastructure and network operations, our customer-facing deployment and support services teams. Prior to coming to the county, got many years, over 38 years as an IT director, CTO, CIO, mostly in the private sector, organizations in the retail, hospitality, manufacturing, transportation, and consumer goods industry. And a little bit about Pasco. So Pasco County, so we're located on the west central coast of Florida. We are in the Tampa Bay region. We're about 20 miles north of Hillsborough County in the city of Tampa. We have about approximately 600,000 residents in the county, over a landmass area of about 750 square miles. And in our IT department here, just to give you a little background on that, we're probably close to about 100 employees on our staff. And we're supporting over 56 departments across the county. Do a lot of work with the various constitutionals as well here in the county. And we're supporting probably close to 3,500 employees. But thanks for having me here, Matt. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bert. With that said, well, I'm not going to have as awesome introduction as Bert, but just a quick introduction from myself. My name is Matt Gibiec, and I'm a senior solutions engineer with Dynatrace. And I'll be your guys' host today. Now, before we dive into the conversation with Bert, I just want to set a quick stage in here of how the conversation will look like. Essentially, we'll engage in a conversation about observability and monitoring and what Bert and Pasco County are doing in this area. Now, obviously, I have some questions that I want to ask Bert, but I would love to encourage you guys to ask questions for yourself. If anything is in specific interest of yours, if you hear anything that Bert says that kind of boggles your mind and maybe you would like to know more, definitely type in the question on chat. It'll show up for us in here, and we'll ask Bert whatever you guys want to talk to Bert about. Now, that said, Bert, thanks again for a great introduction. And what we want to start today with is, right, you introduced Pasco County a little bit, but what we really want to start with is this question. What is your agency's mission and priorities? And what are the consequences if those priorities are not met?
Sure. So our county's mission is serving our community to create a better future. And our vision for the county is to be Florida's premier county. So basically, that's for our county in general, and that's what we're here to support. That is part of our priorities. From an IT perspective, generally, we're very focused on cybersecurity. Our top priority is ensure the integrity and security of our network and information systems. We also have to deliver on our promises, and this includes everything around operational, what we call service delivery excellence, having our systems being available around the clock, 24/7. And from a delivery perspective on projects and programs, of course, we want to be on time, on budget, perhaps ahead of that every time. And certainly, one of our priorities is delivering innovative and also easy to use solutions to both our employees, our staff, and most importantly, the citizens of the county.
All right, awesome. This is great. And you mentioned service availability in your answer in here, right? And then at the end you said that the experience of the citizens is very, very important. And here I would like to ask another question, right? You talked about a lot about the goals, you need to meet different deadlines for the citizens, but how about the employees, right? How is the performance of your IT infrastructure and of your IT environment important for the employees? Is there a tie-in in between those?
Yeah, absolutely. Because they, just like all of us, again, in those 56 plus departments, they're here every day, day in and out, delivering critical county services. And short of having access to the systems they use, the information they need access to, it obviously makes it very difficult to do their jobs and deliver their services if for some reason they cannot access, just use a particular area. If in our development services, building constructions department, if they cannot access, permitting as an example, it's pretty hard to do their job and what they need to do as far as delivering their services. So it's very important that we are here to support them and enable delivery of their critical services.
And that's awesome. Thank you for that point, because we in the observability industry or monitoring, a lot of times hear, hey, it's important that the applications are performing for the customers, right? And I think when we think of customers, the first thing that people think of is customers that buy something, the customers that are interacting with our applications. But I think it's important to remember that sometimes customers are your own employees, right? As they come into work every day and they need to do certain tasks, we need to make sure that those are performing well as well. So no, that's great. Thank you. Now, to follow up on that question, we talked about the priorities and the mission of Pasco County. Now, why is digital transformation, if it is at all, important to meet the above mentioned criteria? And what are some of the challenges that you are facing or maybe still facing when you're going through this digital transformation journey?
Sure, Matt. So, at a high level, I believe, there are a number of important aspects of digital transformation, and especially in the government space, that relate to or support our priorities. First off, comes to mind is, creating government services and solutions that are easy to use. I think that's part of any type of transformation. Citizens expect services to be conveniently available and easy to use, as do, I would say, if you might call our internal customers, our employees and staff. Secondly, building and utilizing powerful data and analytics, which allows faster, quicker, more detailed decision-making, performance management, identification of improvement opportunities is obviously very key. I believe building a modern hybrid infrastructure, and not just for the IT side, that's also building smart infrastructure, things that we can inject and build into, physical infrastructure, buildings, vehicles, equipment, what have you. If you think about all the different, Internet of Things, sensors and what have you that are out there. Focusing on a zero trust security framework, I think, is part of any type of digital transformation. And I think finally, at least again in the government space, it's important that we enhance the level of public trust in government services, the services that we deliver. And of course, doing all that across, I would say, an omni-channel type experience, because some will like to have services delivered the traditional way, walk up, face-to-face customer service, virtual, online, things like chat box, virtual experiences as well. So the omni-channel, mobile is another example, is very important. You asked about challenges. I don't think they're any different than some of the other, what other agencies or organizations would see. It's always about time. How much time do you have available to do all the things that you'd like to do and want to do and need to do? Of course, there's always competing priorities. We go through a budget project planning process every year, but obviously unexpected priorities pop up, and unexpected urgent situations, projects do come up that we have to address. Resources, so people and money, right? that we have to work within the confines of. And obviously, with all the infrastructure and systems and everything that we support, we obviously have to keep things online, keep the lights on, but at the same time, making time to innovate, deliver more advanced services and capabilities. So, again, I don't think those challenges are any different than if you polled, folks from the audience. They probably have many of those same challenges when they talk about digital transformations.
Now, I think that definitely a lot of our attendees today will agree with you. Now, I took out a couple of different things from what you were just saying, right? So when it comes to the digital transformation, what you mentioned is, I took notes on 6 different points that you made in here.
Okay.
It's very important to have your application suites easy to use. It is very important to be able to analyze the data about the performance of your applications. It is very important to have the ability to figure out what are some of the problems that you guys might be having. And if there are problems, get to the bottom of them, get to that root cause. It is also very important to take into the consideration all the infrastructure and, not only network infrastructure, but you even mentioned the physical infrastructure, right? Like buildings, like cars, when everything might be implemented. And lastly, you essentially mentioned that it's very important to make sure that the public trust is at the center of the attention in here. And then you followed up saying that obviously the 6 things that I wrote down in here, there are certain challenges that you're seeing, and then probably everybody's seeing today, which is basically time, money, and resources. And I think that this is an awesome segue to our next question, because the next question is, what does monitoring or observability mean to you? Now I'm going to add a little spin onto it. And in the spectrum of all the challenges that you mentioned right now when we talk about digital transformation, how does monitoring and observability help you fight these challenges, or does it help you at all?
Well, I think they go hand in hand, and clearly they're helping us address and step up to these challenges. But when I look at monitoring, observability, so monitoring to me is I'm looking at the telemetry of various systems. I'm looking at real-time performance. In many cases, it's up-down status. However, with the various monitors and those type of tools, and I'll put monitors in quotes there, in many cases they're very focused on a particular technology stack. So, your server environment, your database environment, your network as examples. When I think of the observability aspect, now I'm thinking of this very deep visibility into, modern distributed systems, whether they're on premises, whether they're in the cloud, whether it's hosted, whether it's SaaS-based products, which allows me with that level of detail to have faster, automated, problem identification, identifying symptoms, and more importantly, get to some type of resolution. And having that across your entire enterprise kind of all correlated. And I don't think observability necessarily says get rid of all your monitoring capabilities. I do believe they kind of operate hand in hand. So, we're, because we've gone down the path of, with Dynatrace, we're not tossing our current tool set. I think they're still, being used for what they're intended for. But I think they go hand in hand, where the observability piece kind of enhances those, gives us much higher level of overall monitoring, but more importantly, better results. Obviously, the goal is from an application and overall network performance and quality of service that we can deliver.
Okay, no, that absolutely makes sense. Now I have a couple of questions coming in on the chat in here, and the first one I'm gonna actually be able to, I think, answer in here for Kelly. The question was, is it just Pasco County that uses Dynatrace, or other counties in Florida are using Dynatrace as well? And how about the state agency level? Bert, I can certainly answer these questions as
I'll let you answer that, Matt, because I'm not sure. I know we've had other agencies contact us for interest in what we're doing and our project progress, but I'll let you take that one.
No, absolutely. Yes, to answer the questions, yes, we have a few other customers on a state and both county level in Florida. Now, the Bert's answer actually was better, right? He mentioned there's some folks that are reaching out and asking, about Dynatrace or about observability and what Pasco County is doing. And Bert, I'm not trying to throw you under the bus in here, but definitely reach out to Bert. I'm sure he'll be able to share with you some of the tips, no pun intended in here, as they're taking when it comes to observability. Now, there's another question from Juan, but I am going to hold off with that one for just a second because I think it will fit in a little bit better after asking our next question. So okay. You explained to us, right, the difference between monitoring and observability and how you guys are looking at it, how Pasco County is looking at it.
Right.
Now, you also mentioned that monitoring really doesn't fully go away when you use the observability practice. So with that said, is it fair to say that you guys are using both a monitoring and an observability strategy today within Pasco County?
Yes, and one of the things that we've decided to build out is we've created, and we're still in the early days of building this out. So we build out this concept of an integrated network operations and security center, and essentially, with regards to Dynatrace, that's more or less become our anchor tenant, if you want to call it that. So that is up front in the center with a lot of with our team members who are I'll just call it eyes on glass, and they're using that tool is kind of their main focus. But at the same time, we have all of our other monitoring tools running in there, and all of the other telemetry, I'd say, across from our operations, all in a very cohesive manner. So literally, we actually have 2 of these INOS now, and they are floor to ceiling, wall to wall displays with teams with operational procedures on how to handle events as they come up, and then also interact very closely with all of our other teams. Because that's also the difference with the observability tool and Dynatrace is it's a tool that's being used and leveraged across all of our teams. Again, we're only 8 months into our project, but I think we made great inroads to get our team aligned around the use of the tool across the entire infrastructure, whether it's database, whether it's network, whether it's on-prem, off-prem, virtual, physical server. We've got that visibility, and obviously with the ability to look at vulnerabilities within the environment using some of the security capabilities. All of our teams have a vested interest in the tool now that we've stood it up. But just to give you a little background on kind of where we're going with this from a strategic standpoint. And again, it's not fully baked yet, but we've made some very good step forward going down this path.
That's great to hear, and I can definitely be a witness in here that even though you mentioned you're 8 months in, I think the progress that you guys have made is tremendous, and seeing you guys going through these changes, absolutely for me is very, very exciting. Now, before we get to Juan's question, one more question from my side will be, obviously monitoring has been around for let's say forever, right? For the sake of basically saying that it's been around for a long time. Now, as you took the leap of faith and when with Dynatrace, you entered that observability practice. And the question here will be, what prompted you to move from monitoring to observability? Or what prompted you to look at observability?
Okay. Yeah, we looked for quite a long time. And I will say, and this could come up in some of the questions that the audience is putting together here, but I would say we looked at almost everything that's out there. Take the Gartner MQ, look at everything that's across the quadrants. We pretty much looked at everything, ended up landing on Dynatrace, but many reasons why we went down this path. And I'll just kind of go through a few of them here. But, one of our concerns issues was we simply cannot accurately report on system availability. We were very heavily dependent on our ticketing systems, our ITSM tool, which our teams would report system up, system down, outages, what have you. And a lot of that was because of their the monitoring they were doing. And then when it came to the end of the day, it was like the only way I could come up with true system availability was doing a lot of manual work and not sure of how accurate that all was. And it's important to us because, as I said earlier, we want to deliver on our promises, and we want to make sure if we're saying we're, 5 nines or pick your number, that we truly were at that level. Another issue we had was in many cases, and again, I'm sure many in the audience run into this, your users know there's an issue before IT does, because you start getting hammered with phone calls to your help desk or service desk. So, okay, yes, system XYZ must be down, or something's going on with it. Or maybe it's something localized, but either way, our customers are calling us. One of the important things is we didn't have really any tools to tell us what was the view of the user as they use our systems and applications. So we were very keen on understanding and having visibility into the user experience. So are they having a good experience? Are they just tolerating their experience? Or is it super? Is it a great experience? So we really wanted a tool that would allow us to literally have a view of that. We also relied upon a lot of manual checks. So we would have our staff do daily system availability checks. Unfortunately, the moment they went through their checklist, within seconds, if a system went sideways, maybe it got the green check mark, so to say, but all of a sudden, 20 minutes later, there was an issue. So, but that's what we were doing at the time. I'd say we probably were a bit siloed in how we're reporting issues. Again, that goes back to the various teams using their specific tool set on the platforms they're supporting. One other important area was root cause. So a lot of the work around root cause was manual, iterative efforts. And with our new tool set and leveraging some of the AI-based capability, I believe we're starting to get a little bit more successful, or at least we're really able to drill down and say, what is the problem, and really fix it? Because obviously, if you're not doing a great job at root cause analysis, you're not really finding and fixing the issues. And guess what? They're going to come back and bite you again and again. I think the visibility into all the underlying performance issues, things that don't break systems or that your users may not see, but over time, if they're not addressed, will come back and haunt you. That's one of the other areas that we were keenly interested in, to maybe see a symptom or to see an area that needs attention before it becomes a real problem. And then finally, because of the way we're going with our environment, we're a hybrid infrastructure. We have on-prem, off-prem. We have multiple data centers, hosted applications, SaaS-based. We need a view into all the above. Some of the existing tools could only see into things that we built, that we hosted. They couldn't see out into someone else's cloud, so to say. And that was important for us because in many cases, we want to hold our vendors accountable too. If we buy a product from, pick your vendor out there, and they say they're 5 nines as part of their SLA, well, we want to hold them to it. So if we have a tool that can be checking on that, it's a way to hold not only ourselves accountable, but also hold them accountable as well. I know that was a lot, but those were some of the many reasons as we went through this and very, very heavy detail with all of our teams for many months before we arrived at the solution and moving forward with Dynatrace.
No, this was definitely a comprehensive list, but that's awesome. With that said, I'll actually would like to engage the audience in here. If you guys are seeing some of the same scenarios or the same things happening, within your agency, within your organization, and maybe you don't have the observability practice, or maybe you do, let us know on chat. If something that Bert mentioned today, let us know which one of these you guys are seeing within your agencies, within your organizations. Now, before we move in with another question that I have, the question that we have displayed in here comes from Juan. Juan, thank you so much for joining us today. And the question is, did you measure the benefit of implementing observability in your critical services? If yes, could you share some?
I would say we are still in the early days, just because, as I mentioned before, we're only 8 months in. But now that we've stood up the environment, we'll be putting it to the test. So we've been gathering data, we've been reporting on our service quality and our systems availability. We've set targets going into this our new fiscal, which actually started October 1st. So as we get into our current year, our new year, we are going to look at Dynatrace as being the barometer, so to say, of how we're doing. So I fully anticipate we'll have real accurate data, and we'll have it across all of our systems down to the application or system level. And that in and of itself is already a new benefit, because I can look at everything either holistically, I can look at everything at an application delivery layer and have very detailed information about how are we doing, how's the system doing, what's that user experience been. And we review this every week. We have weekly system production status meetings, and we look through the high level Dynatrace reporting. We leverage the what Dynatrace calls their Dynatrace score, and see how we're doing. And I would say that based on how we're doing so far, we are getting better, because we actually see an uptick, even though it's not huge with some of our scoring. But I'd say the improvement level so far is we have the data, we have the visibility, we're talking about it. We're talking about it every week with our team. We're reporting on it. And, next year when, we're rolling everything up and looking at our goals, which everyone in our team is held accountable to, and say, so we said we were going to hit X mark, did we actually hit it? And we, without a doubt, can answer that question, yes or no, because we have very detailed and accurate information and data. So I would say we've seen benefits so far. Some of them are probably intangible, but I think we're in a much better state, and we're still learning. We're still moving forward. It's kind of a continual journey here. But I would say, those are high level, some of the benefits we're seeing, at least so far.
No, Bert, these are great. And I'm actually going to throw a little anecdote in here, because I remember when you first, started working with Dynatrace, and you actually just mentioned it a couple minutes ago, one of the things that you focus on is the synthetic monitoring, right? Those are the checks that I believe your teams implemented, right? To automatically, essentially in an automated fashion, check the availability and the performance of your applications. And the reason I wanted to share that with you guys, because when we actually met Bert's team for the first time in person, there was a certain team member that had to come into work 30 minutes earlier, I believe, every day at 7:30 to come in and check whether those sites, those applications are available for folks that will be using them at 8 a.m. So I remember made a joke then that now he is 30 minutes more of sleep time, or 30 minutes more spending at Starbucks getting his coffee. Because now Dynatrace is doing those checks automatically, and not only the whole day, but it also replaces that 7:30 early time that he had to come into the office, not having time to maybe drop off his kids at school, or not having time to get enough caffeine in him in the morning, right? So I specifically remember that one. Juan, I know you have another question. I think it'll actually fit in a little bit better towards the end of our conversation. So we'll table it for now, but we have it, so we'll definitely come back to it. So, we talked about the challenges that kind of prompted you, Bert, to move towards the observability practice. Now, with that said, as you're establishing that observability practice, what would you say were your biggest challenges? What were your biggest successes? And if you could share with the audience some of the lessons learned throughout this process.
Sure. So again, I've said this many times, it's a work in progress, but early on, I'd say the challenges were getting the team aligned around this whole model of, what I call full stack observability, and starting to lean a bit away from, I would say, the traditional, and again, I'll use in quotes, monitoring tools. I think there might have been concern that we're going to eliminate some of those, that there's been a lot of hard work implementing a lot of the tool set we have. Are we just going to let them die on the vine? What's this going to mean with this new tool? But I think as we were going through the process and we were getting the various demos and in some cases trials with the different vendor providers, I think our team started gelling and coming together, saying, "Wow, this is a type of tool that can impact all of us." And at the same time, we're still able to leverage the existing tool set we had. So I think that organizational alignment around the goal and getting everybody on board. And once everybody was on board, I think it just kind of pushed the momentum kind of forward. One of the things that we did have a lot of success in was how our deployment went. And at first, that's always a concern. This is a big project. We got this big enterprise infrastructure. What's it going to take to stand this thing up? How's this going to impact? We got lots of other projects on our plates, what have you. But I would say both our internal project team and our project management folks, and also the team from Dynatrace, so everything from our customer experience manager down to the assigned consultants, of course, Matt, can't forget Matt, that we had a very supportive account team that worked with us. Our team did an outstanding job of working through the project and the deployment. They spent many hours. Obviously, a lot of this, most of this, obviously, was virtual training, virtual sessions, and configuring and standing up, making access to our teams of the Dynatrace University. So early on, even before we got rolling, we had several folks who had taken many of the courses just to learn and get in front of the adoption wave. So those are things that were challenges, but at the same time, I think we were able to meet them because of the hard work and the teamwork that went into that from both Pasco County and also Dynatrace. Another thing that I think that was challenging early on, but we sorted this out, was how are we going to use all this? And again, this goes back to that new capability that I talked about earlier, this INOS, our Integrated Network Operations and Security Center model. So that was new role for some folks. It was kind of a new model. We obviously had to make an investment in that infrastructure as well. I mean, building out kind of the INOS center. And as I said before, we have 2 of them now that kind of back each other up. And our goal is that both of those sites are online and continually talking to each other and providing backup. And also with some of the new tool sets, our challenges have always been, how do we have some of the same capability beyond, I would say, normal work hours, so to say. So we're getting very creative on how we can extend some of our ability to see, have visibility, and also react to issues. I would say outside, I'll just call it the normal business hours. So so from a lessons learned perspective, I would just say the biggest thing is, don't be afraid to take a step in the wrong direction. Make sure that your teams are on board with what you're trying to do and your direction. Don't be afraid to try something new. We never had a dedicated INOS capability or eyes on glass. And I know many organizations are doing that externally or using managed services. We could someday still augment that with some type of a service if we look outside of normal business hours. But for now, it's something that we've made a bet on, and we're leaning into it. So hopefully that'll give you a little background about some of the challenges we had, how we dealt with those, and also how I think we were generally very successful.
No, absolutely, Bert. Thank you for this answer. I hope that some of the or maybe all of our attendees will be able to take something out of those lessons learned. Now, with that said, we actually have a great question that came in on one of the chats on LinkedIn. You did mention that you were trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to do this, right? How are we going to implement this observability practice using Dynatrace across all these different VMs and servers? And the question that we have in here, right, I think is kind of related. And it starts like this. Do you use Dynatrace's log feature? If so, how have your staff adapted to using logs to the pure paths within Dynatrace to troubleshoot problems rather than usual troubleshooting methods? So a little bit loaded question in here, but if we can kind of disassemble it, right? The first one would be, do you use Dynatrace's log feature?
Well, I'm gonna just preface that by I think we'll get more into this capability once we learn more about your new capability coming out, your Grail product. So, and I in this case with the log feature, if we're talking about the ability to look at session level data from, if I can, again, going back to that user experience, we are using those features. I think that's tied into the synthetic monitoring. So we haven't gotten to the point where we can do it on a named user basis. I know Dynatrace is capable of doing that. We just haven't done that yet, but we can look at all the different sessions and literally, if we wanted to play them back and see where maybe something went south or what's an example of a great experience from a user perspective. But in general, I think as far as leveraging some of the logging and the data from within Dynatrace, I hope we learn more when we have our next session and learn more about your new capability that you've recently announced here this past month.
And for everybody that are here with us today, what Bert is referring to is Dynatrace Grail. It is an addition to our platform that has been recently announced. Somewhere on the stream, maybe you guys will be able to see the link, or we'll post it in chat for you, but definitely check it out. And I think it'll really change the world when it comes to log monitoring. Now, Bert, I would like to focus on the second part of the question that came in on chat and maybe change it a little bit. But
okay,
do you think the way you troubleshoot problems today changed once you started using an observability platform like Dynatrace?
It has. I mean, the tool itself, it produces the problem cards. So again, we have our monitoring up. Problem cards get and by the way, we've integrated this within Microsoft Teams as well. So when the problem cards come up, our teams that are part of our support group are seeing these things pop up in their Teams feed. So they're getting these things real time, as are the team that's in front of the displays. The folks doing the eyes on glass kind of monitoring. So obviously that's different because they can quickly drill in. They can quickly use some of the Davis capability to try to get a quick analysis of, hey, what's going on? Because the tool's pretty neat. It comes back and it'll say, have you tried this? We suggest you do that. And that may not be the exact language it uses, but at a high level, it gives some direction. And that's not just from if there's some type of a bottleneck, high CPU legacy on the network, latency on the network side. But if some vulnerability comes up on the security side that's somewhere in your stack, and it alerts you, and it's a way to kind of tackle it real time. I mean, we can actually take quick action if we need to stop something, reset something, shut something down. And also if we need to kind of just look at it from an enterprise perspective, the fact that we can quickly visualize everything across all the different layers, whether there's the database, there's the physical server, there's what we're seeing on network traffic, to something within the application stack itself, something at the code level. The team gets visibility into that very quickly. So hopefully that is gives you some background on what we're doing in that space.
Absolutely, and I'm gonna kind of take out maybe a connect to different things. Early on, you mentioned that before an observability practice, sometimes you would learn about an issue by a lot of tickets being open in your help desk, or a lot of phone calls from the customers, right? So your approach was a little bit, let's call it reactive, right? As you knew about the problem, you're reactive, and now you mentioned that you're able to automate some of these tasks, right? So you have the problem cards, you have the root cause analysis provided by Davis. So would you say that you were able to move your approach when it comes to monitoring or observability from a reactive to more of a proactive approach?
Yeah, it's very, very proactive. And in some cases, it may even be predictive because we see symptoms, we see things happening, or we can take action. Maybe we're seeing issues where, we need to add some capacity. Maybe it's an issue where, some update or some other type of issue needs to be addressed or backed out. It could even be something that we're looking at before it's even put into production, that we can catch it before it's out there and actively being used. So definitely, I think proactive without a doubt. We're not waiting for that that down situation and okay, let's take action now. And also, root causes in this case isn't always about fixing something when you have an outage. I mean, we see things that need to be addressed or fixed, and they're not necessarily impacting the users yet. But we're able to address those hopefully beforehand. So, we find and fix something before it truly does create an operational impact.
Absolutely, and I think that there's another question that actually came in from Mike on chat, talking about shifting from the reactive to proactive model. Since you started the implementation of Dynatrace solution, what has been the feedback from the end user standpoint? And I'm going to twist the question a little bit. When we talk about end users, let's make sure that we talk about the citizens, but let's make sure that we also include the employees, as we early on mentioned.
Again, I would say in this space, one of the things that has been helpful, and whether the end user is an employee using one of our systems, or yes, it could be citizen facing, as an example. But as we've been able to find and fix situations, I know Dynatrace helped us highlight an issue that we had with our third-party payment processor, and it wasn't like it's down, but it just was problematic. And I would say the fact that we're able to understand and now realize that, when someone says, hey, it's taking me, why does it take so long to do this? Whatever that function is, or why is there a delay? We're seeing those things and we're starting to tackle those. So obviously you get fewer of the calls that say a system is slow, it disconnected, or, I had to do this 3 times before, I was able to process this transaction. So I wouldn't say we're getting any type of direct feedback per se, but I would anticipate and hope that over time, as we do our usual customer satisfaction surveys, and also, getting feedback from, citizens on, how are we doing delivering services, that we will see that impact over time. But I will say that, right now, it helps us very much get aligned with some of that feedback because, again, in many cases, maybe in the past, and maybe, others can understand this. In some cases, teams may not quickly jump to, okay, is something up or down when, okay, there's a slow or end user issue per se. Now we can actually see that in detail. And with some of the capability, we can drill down on that and get very, very detailed on step by step, what was that particular user's experience.
Awesome. So to kind of put it in an observability terms, Bert, I would say that you definitely saw the median time to resolution and the median time to detection, right, improve, right? Now being able to shift from the reactive to more of a proactive approach, you're able to detect those issues quicker. Hopefully, like you mentioned, in some cases before the customers even know, right? Because maybe something is not down yet, but we're already seeing slowness, we're already seeing some failures. Now your teams are able to react before you get those tickets or before you get those calls from users that are not able to complete the actions that they wanted to complete. Now we have another question from Juan that we queued up in here, but the question was a little bit different spin. When we talk about digital transformation, we definitely have to talk about cloud migration, cloud journeys. We probably everybody today hear the word cloud in some type of shape in their environments. Maybe not fully cloud yet for a lot of organizations, a lot of agencies, but definitely we're seeing some things in there. So with that said, how is observability evolving when embracing the cloud journey from your perspective, Bert?
Well, I think it's helping to enable it because, as I said earlier, we didn't have much visibility, if any visibility, into some of these environments that were outside our own four walls, so to say. Also, in many cases, prior to having what we're using today with Dynatrace, you had to install something, a physical appliance, other resources that weighed in on your infrastructure. That you could do that when it's your own infrastructure, but if it's something, it's like infrastructure as a service, if you're up in AWS or Azure, or if it's a SaaS-based type solution, or even a fully hosted solution by your, whoever your vendor may be, we had no visibility. We couldn't tap in and go look into that environment. I think now with this type of tool and the capabilities we have today, we're not limited because it's like, yep, we can see what's going on with our Office 365 environment. We can see what's going on with some of our applications that are fully hosted by a vendor, because everything's delivered through the cloud when we're working with Dynatrace. And yes, we do install some resources on our side to make that happen, but at the same time we get some basic infrastructure monitoring capabilities and visibility, especially with some of the synthetic monitoring that we're doing. So I think it's this tool and the visibility we get and the applicability actually help enable and kind of take away that, hey, here's a reason why we can't go to the cloud or can't use, really build out a full hybrid type infrastructure.
That's great. And now we have a great comment here, and so many integration APIs already available. I think that's if we take out something from this answer that Bert just said. I think the ability to integrate and the ability to actually use Dynatrace to enable you to move to cloud. Now you know that as you're going, taking that journey towards the cloud, you have an observability platform along your side, being able to help you out throughout this, something that could be a pretty complex process. Now we have about 10 minutes left in here. There's a couple of questions that I still have prepared for you, Bert. The one that I'm gonna continue with is focusing on the application security solution within the Dynatrace observability practice. So as Bert, obviously that's part of an offering that comes in with the Dynatrace platform. Now, how are you using this capability today within your environment? And are you using it within a first-party application, so something that you guys are developing, or maybe third-party as well?
I think it's all the above. I mean, one of the things with the the vulnerability capabilities and security capabilities are, we've been able to use it to identify potential issues within, again, some of these vendor hosted environments or where there's a turnkey type solution where typically we would not be delving in or responsible for that code, so to say. But we have found issues and in turn have talked to our vendor partners and said, here's what we found. And in turn, and I'm not going to give any specific examples of that, for any obvious reasons, but it helped us again hold our vendors accountable, and request it and required them, and they in turn did make changes or remove a config file or do an update or upgrade that potentially had issues with it. So I know there was a couple early wins, but it is something that I think we need to take more advantage of and will over time. But I think we've seen some tremendous value in it out of the gate, so to say.
That's a great answer, and if I want to highlight, if I could highlight a couple things in here, right? When we talk about those third-party applications, I think it's very important that early on, Bert mentioned that hey, they're able to use Dynatrace to make sure that the SLOs, right, the service level objectives, or the SLAs, the service level agreements that those vendors give them, now they can keep them accountable from the performance perspective. But using the security offering, you also know that if there is a log4j in your environment because you're using an off-the-shelf product that you didn't write, but you still need to use it within your environment, which now could be posing a big threat to your environment, you're able to utilize the Dynatrace platform to detect it, and as you mentioned, hold your vendor accountable. That's it. That's absolutely a great story. Now, guys, if you have any other questions, definitely this will be the last minute, the last call in here to type them on chat to ask Bert. And then from my perspective, two more questions that we have prepared for today. The first one would be, what is your strategy when it comes to observability and monitoring and maybe Dynatrace for, let's say, the next 12 or 24 months? When you think about the future, where do you envision Pasco County in 12 or 24 months?
Well, where we'd like to be is where we can have as much automation built out and leveraging a lot of the AI capabilities, the Davis capabilities, to have the tool do as much as possible to, in many cases, what some of our staff had to do in the past. So where we can automate actions when certain symptoms are seen, certain situations are observed, that we can have those actions in place, and hopefully not be so dependent or still be dependent on someone actually having to push a button, so to say, to again take some type of action. So and I would say ongoing, we would like to extend the capabilities. So we do have this full around the clock type visibility, whether it's our internal teams or we're supplementing ourselves with some other type of services. But the bottom line is that we are on top of this around the clock. We don't have a situation where an on-call type situation has to be relied upon to fix or take some action. So it is trying to automate. It is trying to get our root cause analysis process extremely fine-tuned using the tool. And ultimately, it's also just our teams just all continuing to adopt the tool. Whether you're someone on the application development side, whether you're on the network side, your infrastructure, you're on the database, whatever your particular area is, that you're really leveraging the tool and going back to that conversation about Grail as we learn more about it. Perhaps that could be in the mix as well, depending upon where we see that and some of the potential benefits. So that's probably it in a nutshell.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Now, the last question that I have for you, and might be a short answer, but might be a kind of difficult question. But let's see what you come up with. So the last question that I have for you, Bert, is if you had to encapsulate in just one sentence what Dynatrace means to your agency, means to Pasco County, what would it be?
So I would probably say that Dynatrace and its observability capability brings confidence, especially when you're in a complex hybrid cloud environment. And even more importantly, it helps improve organizational alignment and your focus on your service availability and quality. I know that's a long sentence, but
No, but this is awesome, and I personally love the first portion of it. Brings confidence. I think it's so important and to everybody's job to be confident in the things that you're using today and the things that you're doing. And if you can have that confidence, knowing that you're looking at something that you definitely have to take an action on, I think just that alone already is a great value add. Now, with that said, we have about 3 minutes left. So with that said, Bert, I want to thank you very much for joining us today for the inaugural episode of Dynatrace Tips. I personally learned so much today. Even though I've had a chance to work with you for the past 8 months, throughout our conversation, I've learned so much. And I certainly hope that a lot of folks on the call today learn as well. If you guys have any other questions, definitely feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn or to reach out to Bert on LinkedIn, and then I'm sure we'll be able to field some of your questions. Now, that said, before we say goodbye today, I do want to invite you guys for the second episode of Dynatrace Tips that will be held in December. We are currently shooting for second week. I cannot yet tell you who will be our guest. We'll keep it as a surprise for now, but definitely be on the lookout for announcements on LinkedIn, announcements on other social media platforms, letting you know who will be our second guest. So with that said, thank you so much, everybody, for joining. Bert, thank you so much for walking us through the digital transformation journey and the observability journey that Pasco County took and that you certainly led within the organization. Last but not least, you guys are seeing a link that is scrolling down on the feed in here. If you want to learn more about Dynatrace and what Dynatrace can do for state and local governments, state and local agencies, you can certainly reach out to Bert, but you can also hit our website and find some more information there. So that's it. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks, Matt.
Today. Thank you, Bert.